All right.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
Hi, Ruth. How are you?
I'm doing well.
You look great.
Well, I've had such busy days. I've never had a question and answer thing. I've had interviews, I've had videos, everything else, but I've never had this before. First of all, you all know I'm 103. But again, age is just a number. It's what you do with your number that's important. And so people say, well, what have you been doing with your big number? Well, over the last 3 years, I've been working on this book. As I say, it's called My Travels Through Life, Love, and Literacy, over 100 years in the making. Why was I writing the book? The reason is people keep asking me, what's your secret to longevity? How could you start a national literacy organization when you weren't even a teacher? You were in 62 countries and you training in 26 developing companies. What effect did that have on you? And finally, they say, how can you still live a positive life when you lost the love of your life? He was for 73 years together. Well, that's why looking back over my 100 plus years, I've learned that seeds have been planted in our early life that make us the people we are. And I learned a lot about myself. I made a lot of mistakes, made some successes, but I learned from them. And that's what I've tried to share in my book. My mother and father had saved for me to go to the University of Illinois. When we went to Uncle Frank, my mother and I, and this was, remember, early 1930s, so that's a long time ago. And we went to him and asked for the money for me to go. And he shook his head and said, no, we're saving it for the boys. That was my first inkling that I was living in a man's world. And it's surprising how the difference that made. In my day, remember, a woman was never a doctor, was never a lawyer, was never a head of any organization. Of course, the blessing there was, who did I meet at this tiny junior college? I met my love of my life. Some things, even though they're disasters, they come out well in the end. I have a whole chapter, though, in a book on empowering women around the world, because we've come a long way, but we're still working. And the fact that we can work together is so important. When the 1960 census comes out, remember that's nearly 60 years ago, it said that there were 11,055 functional literate in the Syracuse area. I don't believe a life without reading. I couldn't believe that. Who are they? Why couldn't they read? What was being done about it? Well, I did some research and I found nothing was being done. So I decided to have a coffee at my house. Took a lot of courage for me to invite all the members of the Board of Education. They came, and one women's organization, it was Churchwomen United, which I didn't know, and they were as shocked as I was at this figure. But nobody offered to do anything except one person, and that was Myra Eady, the only woman there from Churchwomen United. And I said, well, what church do you represent? And she says, no, I represent the women of 90 churches. So I thought, oh, they'll take over. I mean, someone's got to do something. So what I did was I spruced up my talk and I went to talk to the women, and they voted unanimously to sponsor a literacy project, but only if I would take charge. So that was the beginning of Literacy Central New York. We called it Literacy Volunteers of Syracuse at the time, and that was the beginning. And it was amazing to me, the mistakes I made, because I had no knowledge of this. Remember, I was not a teacher. I was nothing like that. And the first year we were losing students and tutors. And I couldn't understand why, because I was just taking what people told me. And I did what I should have done earlier. I called Syracuse University and I talked to Dr. Fran Green, who was head of the reading clinic at the time. And I told him my problem. And he said, I know why. Your methods are 30 years behind the times. And I said, oh, would you help me? He said, yes. I want you to come in next Saturday and work with 12 of my PhD professionals in reading. Well, I was scared, but I went with my notebook to take notes, and I learned so much. And they gave me all the professional techniques that you use. Then my job was to take that and take it out of the PhD language and put it in layman's language so that my tutors could understand it. And that was the beginning of Tutor, my book, which is now in the 8th edition. And then going to other countries after it was well established here as well. It was interesting. The first group that asked me were the International Methodists. And they came and said, would you come to Africa and to India and teach? So Bob and I would give 3 months every year. That's why we were in 62 countries. I kept journals of every place I've gone. In fact, sometimes your memory isn't quite all there, and I had to look back at the journals to be sure that everything was exactly as I saw it. And that's why there are a lot of international stories in my book, too. In this book, there are 40 international stories from 23 countries. South Africa was a very important one when I was invited there during apartheid. They had tremendous racial problems. And so it gave me a lot of information of what to do. And people ask me now, well, what does your literacy organization have to do with racism? And I remind them, we have white tutors teaching people of color as students. We have tutors of color teaching white students. And if you have a goal, they're working together, what happens is you forget differences of race. You forget difference of religion. You forget difference of background. You have a common goal, and you work together, and you become friends. Interfaith Works had asked me if I would teach the imam's wife English. Now, the imam is head of the Muslims, you know. I said, yes, I would. But he wanted to interview me because he didn't want anybody to proselytize his wife. I don't believe in proselytizing anyhow. So he interviewed me, and I passed the interview. And as we got up to go, I said, you do know I'm a Christian. He said, yes, I know you're a Christian. Do you want to know why I'm a Christian? Yes. Why are you a Christian? Well, I'm a Christian because I was brought up a Christian. But if I was brought up a Muslim, I think I'd be a good Muslim. He shook his head enthusiastically. And then I said, if you were brought up a Christian, you might be a good Christian. See, it goes back to how you were brought up. And then he got the point. Respect for other people's religions. I look for the similarities. I accept the differences so we can all work together. I had to learn this too because I didn't know. A balanced life is what helps in every way. And what are the parts of the balanced life? Well, it's your physical. But very often as people retire, what they tend to do, they say, you know, I worked hard all my life. I'm entitled to sit and do nothing. I'm entitled not to have to go out and work. And what that helps and do, you go downward. So I am pushing myself to do more exercises. I exercise every morning. People say, isn't it nice you like to exercise? I said, who said I like to? But I do keep on doing it. So that was physical. And then it's mental. I do research. I've done the book. I like doing things like this. I like reading. So that is a very important part, is keeping going. And as I say, I'm on 2 boards and I'm in 2 book clubs. And so I keep doing research on that. So it's physical, mental. Then the third one is emotional. And that's love, trust, all the good things. Also is forgiveness, helping others, and always doing it. Then the fourth one is spiritual. Well, that has a lot to do with how you were brought up. Whatever you do, keep helping others. So those are the things I think. I don't know why else I'm living this long. I've learned from other people, and I hope that you will learn from me, from my mistakes as well as my successes. But know that whatever you do, whatever your life is, you're touching other people all the time, whether you think you are or not. And when each of you look back at your own early life, you'll find things that you had forgotten about, and they have made a difference in your life. Remember, your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren will want to know what you did all during this time and during your early life. So I suggest you all look back at your early life and you'll find things that were important. So whatever you do, you just have to keep plugging along. Life continues on. As I say, and it's lifelong learning. I'm still learning. I'm still going along.